In this video, we will start splining our animation, starting by polishing the up and down of the torso root and then the feet motion. The first obvious step is to go into pose mode into our rig, select all our keys, press the T key and switch to Bezier interpolation. You can switch between the action editor and the graph editor by pressing Ctrl Tab. I will make sure all the curves are exposed by clicking on the Show Hidden option. You may also press Alt H to make sure that there is no curve that is manually hidden. From there, I will press A to select all the curve and then press Shift E and choose Make Cyclic. Now all of our curve get this modifier and our whole animation will be cycling in time infinitely. I often start polishing my animation with the feet and go back and forth with the torso. In this case, we will start by polishing the Z location of the torso root. This is the most important channel during a run cycle, the up and down motion. If we now play our animation, we are no longer in step mode. And while there are some glitches, it doesn't look that bad. Here is our current Z curve and here is what we are going to do with it. The idea is to bring contrast to our up and down. For a heavy character, you would favorize the down pose. For a light and agile character like ours, you will favorize the up pose, meaning that we will hold our character in the air a little bit. The idea is to bring contrast to the motion, so we will have a slight plateau in the top position and then a fast down pose with a fast bounce, meaning that the curve will rapidly get back to its up position. You really have to focus on the up and down motion of your character, and if needed, you can hide the legs and the arms. Since our character is bouncing twice during the 24 frame of its cycle, I have refined the keys from 0 to 12 and then duplicated those keys from 0 to 12 onto 12 to 24. Then I get rid of any keys that were remaining previously. This way, the base up and down motion of my root is done and I can switch to the feet motion. As explained many times, animation is not a linear workflow, so we will probably have to get back to the root motion and switch between root and feet, root and torso, etc. This up and down motion is mostly built upon a feeling, but I've shaped it so that my character is holding a bit in the air, and the speed at which he's going down and going up is not exactly the same. When you are doing a jump or an eye blink, it's always good to have a contrast between the up motion and the down motion, even if it's just about one frame. When I polish the feet, whether it's for a cycle or for another animation, I always start with the location. I often polish the feet pretty early on because a lot of the torso motion, the hips motion, is based on the feet motion. The first thing I want to define is the contacting position of the feet. To get a nice looking and dynamical run cycle, it's cool to have a straight leg during the contact pose. So as mentioned previously, in this case, my character is a bit too far from the ground to get a good pose. So I can switch back to the root controller and offset the whole Z curve down. Once I define my contact pose, it's important to also define the moment the feet will leave the ground. And as you may remember in the previous cycle we have created, the interpolation of the foot while it's on the ground should be linear, because once on the ground, the feet will travel at a constant speed. I can convert the keys on frame 2 and frame 5 by selecting them and pressing the V key and switching to vector. Then we can delete any key between frame 2 and frame 5. We'll have to do this for all the location curve Z, Y and X. For the time being, we are focusing on Z and Y. Once done, both curves between frame 2 and 5 are linear, making a straight line. This is the kind of obvious moment while polishing the feet. From there, I will then focus on getting a good feeling for the rest of the motion. As the foot leaves the ground, it still has momentum from the moment it was traveling on the ground. This is why I like to push it back. I want to favorize the backward and forward position and have a quick motion during the passing pose. The passing pose doesn't read as well as the up pose and the pushing pose. Favoring the airborne poses of our character, his run will feel more agile and light. Why in the end I have a tight spacing around frame 12 and frame 0. As the feet ease or slow down into their extreme pose, and then I will accelerate during the passing poses. Another thing I like to do is to have a great acceleration just before the contact pose, so that we can feel that the foot is smashing on the ground and then pushing backward. And we can see this acceleration between frame 0 and frame 2, where our curve gets more and more vertical. As usual, here you can see the final polished curve of the Y and Z location of the feet. Try to match the motion path you can see on the screen. You can pause the video there. Next step is polishing the forward rotation of the foot. To do so, as explained during the blocking, I always favorize using the foot roll controller. I will make sure that I have a nice heel contact on frame 2 and that I have at least one frame with a flat foot. X rotation of this controller must be set to 0 around frame 3. It might not be the case if you study sprinter references, where they are mostly contacting with the ball of their foot, as they are constantly accelerating forward. But for a constant speed run cycle, it's better to contact with the heel. It will look better, you will have more contrast into your motion, and the idea is to transition smoothly from the heel to the toe, so that the character keeps momentum. As I'm reworking the heel position, the leg is less straight during the pushing pose, so I can slightly offset the Y location curve of the foot, and then get back onto my heel controller. Again, we are not into a linear workflow, and we need to go back and forth onto the different controllers to hit better poses. Here I will get back onto the torso root controller and select all the keys of the Y location and move them down to push the whole body of my character forward and get a more dynamic pose. From there, I will select again my foot controller and move its Y curve slightly down on the contact pose and on the pushing pose. So we are always refining the position of our character. Now I can get back to work onto the heel and make sure I have a nice roll of the foot. Here you can see again the curve as a reference and use it to polish your own curve. But you may focus on your own run cycle, because this specific curve matches my specific animation. And if you have differences regarding your feet position or the height of the torso controller, you will have variation. The idea is to make the tip of the foot slightly pointing backward and down during the passing pose to get this nice dragging motion, and transition into having the heel down while the foot is about to hit the ground. Next, we will polish the toe controllers. This animation, I've only used the main toe controller. Since the big toe controller moves along with it, that's perfectly fine. This part of the animation is pretty straightforward. First of all, we will only be animating using the X Euler rotation curve. This is to create a nice follow-through animation of the toes dragging, something similar to what we did with the tail of the squirrel character. It's important to cancel the rotation while the foot is on the ground so that the toes won't clip with the ground. This is why the keys on frame 4 and 5 are switched to vector. One interesting subtlety I've done, delay by one frame the moment the toes get flat on the ground. The foot gets flattened on frame 3 and the toes follow through on frame 4. When the foot leaves the ground, the toes are pointing toward the previous pose, When the foot is moving forward, the toes are slightly pointing backward. One thing you can use to help yourself is the motion path of the foot we have on screen. The toes should be pointing toward the previous frame during the cycle. This in most cases will bend them way too much, but then you just have to adjust their curvature so that the foot have a nice and natural pose. Here is the final curve of the X rotation of the toe controller. As usual, you can pause the video there to compare this curve with yours, and again, this is the curve of my animation. Yours might be a bit different. We've been mostly working on the foot from the side view. It's time to revise it a bit from the front view with the X location curve. I've selected back the foot controller, hidden all the keys but the X location, and we will work on the side-to-side motion. Remember what I told you regarding the location of the foot when hitting the ground, a linear interpolation. And regarding the side-to-side motion, we need a flat curve, meaning that the foot will move onto a straight line. To do so, I will convert keys on frame 2 and 5 to vector, and get rid of any keys in between. While I was originally planning to make the foot push inward when leaving the ground and then during the passing pose getting on the outside, decided during this polishing stage to do the inverse. As I told you before, this motion can vary from people to people, depending on anatomic attributes, but also the skill to run from this person. Since my character is agile and skilled, it might be better to kind of follow the motion of an athlete. In this case, the foot is getting outside while getting off the ground, inside during the passing pose, a bit outside during the up pose, and finally hit its contacting pose. You should keep this side-to-side motion pretty subtle. If the motion is too contrasted, the run will look a bit sloppy, as if your character was lacking of control. So beyond the motion here, we are defining the character. We are defining who he is and how skilled he is. And this is what makes the difference between motion and animation. As usual, here is the final X location curve for the foot controller. Once you're done with this, you can call the foot splining and polishing done. Or you can stay with me for a couple of extra minutes, where we will add some extra super subtle rotation to the foot to bring its motion to the next level. To do so, I will use first the Y quaternion rotation of the foot. I don't want it to rotate while on the ground, so as usual, I will create a flat curve bound by two vector handles. We will use the Y rotation curve to slightly twist the foot toward another target. Check the orientation of the thumb while I'm rotating the foot during this polishing stage. I'm pushing it inward while the foot is leaving the ground and during the passing pose, and then I'm slightly pushing it on the outside while the foot is about to contact the ground. Since the foot is using quaternions, we need to play on both the Y and Z rotation curve to properly orientate the foot. Just scrub through this reference video, focusing on the orientation of the foot. We'll find the link to the YouTube video in the documentation as usual. Here are the final shape of the Z and Y quaternion rotation curve of the foot controller. From there is another thing we need to fix, it's the pull target of the knee. Here again we could work a lot on the left to right motion of the knee, which is super subtle during a run cycle, but still exists. Since our character is pretty light on his feet, I will just try to keep the knees aligned with the run. So I'm just going frame to frame and adjusting the X location of the pull controller so that it looks a little cleaner. Having the knees almost aligned with the feet and the hips will look better and more dynamical. The ultimate detail before we mirror the motion onto the other foot is the bank or side-to-side rotation of the foot. From a front view, when the foot hit the ground, it's not perfectly flat. When the foot hit the ground, it's generally slightly rotated toward its outer edge. and it will roll onto the thumb while pushing backward. This is not a big deal, but this is the kind of detail that will make your run cycle look a little better. From there, we can mirror the animation onto the other leg's controller. First, we need to select all the right leg controller we've just polished. Then in the graph editor, press Alt-H to make sure you don't have any hidden curve. From there, press A to select all the curve and then Ctrl-C to copy those curves. Then we can select all the controllers on the left leg. And from there, in the graph editor, press Alt-H to make sure you don't have any hidden curve. Now select all the keys but the one on frame 0. From there, make sure that the playhead is on frame 0 and press Ctrl-Shift-V to paste the mirror curves. Now we have this fun animation where both legs do have the same motion, and we need to offset it. To do so, in the graph editor, press Shift-D to duplicate all the frames. Don't press Enter. Then press the X and 24. This will move those newly created frames by 24 frames on the right. If we now move those keys in time left to right while playing the animation, we can see that we are currently offsetting the motion. So if I press G, X minus 12, now the left leg motion is offset by 12 frames, so half the length of the cycle with the right leg. And our cycle is done. To make this clean, I will go on frame 0, press I and insert a keyframe on all channels, select all the keys on frame 0, press V and switch them to free. Then I will duplicate them with Shift-D and move them on frame 24. We can now delete any keys after frame 24 and before frame 0, and both our legs are now cycling and are polished.